with Archidiakono. 3 seconds at midcourt. Jenkins gives it to Jenkins for the championship.
It's legendary moments like these that make March Madness the work of art that it is. Moments you can't find anywhere else in the sports world. And this shot by Chris Jenkins, a game-winning 40-foot three at the buzzer for a national championship, it doesn't get better than that. But what if I told you it did? What if I told you there's an even better and more important shot that was taken on the biggest stage just 7 years prior to this? That's right, that shot exists, and it is incredible.
Half-court heave!
But in order to fully understand the weight of a shot like this, you need to experience firsthand the unbelievable and near impossible journey that Gordon Hayward and his Butler Bulldogs embarked on in March and April of 2010. A journey that has faded into obscurity in the modern March Madness zeitgeist, but is in my opinion one of the best individual Cinderella runs a team has been on in the history of sports. But before we get into things though, I want to thank you all for the unreal support you guys showed on the 2018 Loyola video. Again, videos like these take a grueling amount of hours to make, and I can't get paid for them due to NCAA copyright restrictions, so I really appreciate you all commenting, liking, and most importantly, subscribing. I'm glad you all enjoyed the last one so much. I hope you all help me out by subscribing, and I hope you all enjoy the incredible story of Butler 2010. I truly believe there is no better way to introduce the 2010 Butler Bulldogs than with a clip taken from the 2010 Horizon League Championship. Keep in mind, at this point in the game, Butler was up by 25.
It hasn't been Howard and Hayward. Instead, it's been Mack and Todd that have really done the bulk of the damage. How about Howard? Look at that. Oh, this place is going crazy.
What you just witnessed was the sheer grit that the 2010 Butler Bulldogs had, and the grit of the Horizon League Tournament's MVP himself, Matt Howard. The team was fittingly comprised of absolute dogs. A small shifty guard named Shelvin Mack, who was an absolute spark plug, would bring them down the court. Their key pieces would outdog the opponent on defense, and Matt Howard would just get grimy and do all the dirty work. And I mean, there are entire compilations of this guy, but not of his highlights, simply his intangibles. That's what made Butler so special and allowed them to go on this run. But I'm forgetting one guy, their leading scorer and X factor behind it all, Gordon Hayward.
This how the perky feel, this how the ecstasy feel, this how the sandy feel, watch how that motherfucker feel.
Gordon and the gang had just solidified their bid for the 2010 NCAA tournament off the back of not only the longest winning streak in the sport of basketball, currently at 20 consecutive wins, but also the only team to have a perfect record against their own conference in Division I. It's safe to say the Bulldogs weren't your average mid-major. This team was legit and here to play. And just in case there was any lingering doubt on what this smaller school was set out to accomplish, they made their message abundantly clear in the first round when pitted against 12th seeded UTEP. You see, the first round started off shaky as it always did, with Butler being down by 6 at halftime already. But despite what the massive win streak might have you suggest, this was a comeback team. They came out of half, got locked in, Shelvin Mack hit 2 threes right off the bat, and that spawned their insane burst to a 28-point win. The story of the game was Shelvin Mack's 25-point explosion, and the team was feeling absolutely great, especially since the insane Vanderbilt team that they were set to face off against next got upset by Murray State. And so the Sweet 16 was already in sight for the Bulldogs. The only problem was that standing in their way was Murray State, who actually turned out to be a real threat. Already cruising into the round of 32, Butler got off to a hot start before conceding an insane 9-0 run at the end of the first half, heading back to the locker room down by 6 to the 13th seed. After what I imagine was an incredible stern talking to from Brad Stevens, they came out swinging in the second half to preserve their win streak, eventually retaking the lead, and things were looking great until Murray State's Isaiah Canaan caught fire from 3.
Here's Cannon, a pull-up 3. Got it! And Murray State back in front by 1 point.
Taking Murray State on a 7-0 run, and all of a sudden it seemed like that win streak had met its end. Thankfully for Butler, Shelvin Mack hit a clean jumper to equalize, followed by Norrid taking the lead with an insanely acrobatic layup. It got to a point where Butler had the lead by 2 with just 17 seconds left in the game, and Matt Howard was at the line. The problem was that Murray State was hot, and Howard's free throw percentages were not. And so, if Howard missed this shot and gave the opponent 25 seconds to orchestrate a game winner when they were this hot, they would be in such deep trouble. Howard had to hit this.
81% free throw shooter. misses here.
He missed. And worse than that, Murray State had the ball. But while most people would hang their head and crumble after such a catastrophic miss, that was not the cloth from which Matt Howard was cut.
Thomas the rebound, and here we go, 15 seconds. Murray State, here's Miles driving.
Howard had a breathtaking defensive recovery to force the kick out, but now Murray State's best player had the floor to operate with 10 seconds. An entire 10 seconds for one of the shiftiest guards in college basketball to put a clunky tall forward on skates. This was not good for Butler. What was good for Butler, however, was that clunky forward, he happened to be Gordon Hayward.
Sometimes it can. True freshman, 7 seconds. And 5 seconds. Murray State looking for some magic. It's deflected to the backcourt by Hayward, and it's over. Oh my goodness! Butler is halfway.
Butler had shown the world that Bulldogs wasn't a mascot, but an identity, and while they had managed to stay afloat against a 13th seed, their prize for their illustrious efforts was a date with the #1 seed Syracuse. Syracuse and Duke were the consensus best teams in the league, and although Syracuse was without their star center Arinze Unawaku, betting lines and the media alike knew that it wouldn't matter. Butler had got here on an impressive streak of luck and wins, but their string of luck was about to be snapped by real talent.
Butler hasn't played a player like this all season. What's their answer for him?
I don't really think they have an answer, because when you want to look at the biggest discrepancy between these two basketball teams, it's athleticism. Matt Howard's a guy, not the most physical person in terms of his athletic ability. He'll try to bang, he'll try and mix things up inside. He can probably slip a copy of the New York Daily News, though, underneath his sneakers when he's trying to get off the ground for a rebound. I think it's going to be enough. This Syracuse team, far too talented for Butler.
That's a thick paper. That's not a fair assessment. That's a thick paper.
Despite all the chatter in their ear, the game would begin and the Dogs would go to work. By the time halftime rolled around, the team that had no chance was up by 10. Hayward and Mack were doing what they do up to that point and absolutely cooking, but Syracuse was #1 for a reason, and their best players in Wes Johnson and Andy Routins took the leads from there. They stole the reins of the game from there and led a 15-4 comeback run that would retake the lead late in the second half. Things weren't looking so good anymore, but Butler had one more X factor and ace in the hole. Yet again, Gordon Hayward. Despite Hayward's efforts, however, the Dogs were down 54-50 with just over 5 minutes to go. It would be hard to hold a team that was this hot like Syracuse was. However, if there was a pack of defensive dogs to do just that, it would be the Butler Bulldogs. They managed to keep the onslaught going whilst holding Syracuse on the other end, managing an unreal 11-0 run orchestrated by these two monumental plays from Matt Howard. The same Matt Howard that the media had this to say about just hours prior.
Matt Howard's a guy, not the most physical person in terms of his athletic ability. He'll try to bang, he'll try and mix things up inside. He can probably slip a copy of the New York Daily News, though, underneath his sneakers when he's trying to get off the ground for a rebound.
It was over. Just like that, Butler had pulled off the biggest upset of the year, and this game was the official game that put the world on notice. The Bulldogs weren't a joke anymore. They weren't a Cinderella. They were here to win it all. Even though it was a massive upset and their 23rd straight win, there was still a lingering asterisk that things would have been different if Syracuse had Arinze Unawaku. And so, for the first time all tournament, they would meet with a contending team at the peak of their health when facing Kansas State in the Elite Eight, the 2 seed. Millions watched from home, with everyone wondering one question on the mind. Was Butler actually good, or were they just lucky? This Elite Eight matchup would be the perfect recipe to finally silence the doubt that somehow remained after 20 23 straight wins. Butler came out clicking immediately from tip-off, clearly still hot from the previous game, and would dominate the first half, up by 7 after 20 minutes of ball. However, Dennis Clemente wasn't going out that easy, and he orchestrated an influx of points that would give them their first lead in the entire game late into the second half. Butler was letting it slip away and their real chance to show the world who they were. But Gordon Hayward and Shelvin Mack, they knew they would never let it slip for too long. They retook the lead off of a couple great shots and were up by 6 with under a minute to go. Clemente had the ball again and was trouble, but playing lockdown defense when it mattered most, that was what Butler was built for. The Butler Bulldogs were officially one of the last 4 teams in March Madness that officially garnered the respect of the entire country, and the fan base was ecstatic. They were amidst one of the best runs in the history of the tournament, with Gordon Hayward's 22-point performance proving that they were just getting better and better by the game. It was an absolute celebration for the community, but if they wanted to really have a chance to win this thing, to win a championship, they'd have to dig deep and grab yet another win in a row against a great Michigan State team. And while no one has had the answer for the towering Gordon Hayward and Matt Howard duo all season, Michigan State had a little answer named Draymond Green. The same Draymond Green, world-renowned today for his rather intimate playing style in the league. The semifinal showdown began with Lucius coming out and banging 2 threes for Michigan State. But Gordon Hayward followed this up immediately by matching it, and just like that, we knew we were in for a classic. Michigan State started to really take off early on, with Draymond Green getting in on the action. But yet again, Gordon Hayward was reminding the world the kind of tournament run that he was having, one of the all-time best. Shelvin Mack hit a nice 3 to cap off Butler's small comeback, and they would head into halftime tied 28-28 with the juggernaut. The second half began a lot like the first, as Lucius went up and immediately knocked down a 3. Then back and forth continued for the rest of the game, with Butler getting off to a lead.
Beasley reaching in and throwing it down. Butler with his largest lead of the semifinal.
But with time running down and Michigan State starting to lock them down on defense, Draymond Green took it upon himself to save the Spartans offensively.
Draymond leaning in.
Back on the other end of the court, Butler couldn't hit a shot to save their lives, and with Shelvin Mack on the bench, they would go to a guy that's got them to this point. Their leader in Gordon Hayward to make the plays that he's been making all year round. Gordon came to play, but Draymond came to play as well, with Hayward giving up a huge foul thanks to Draymond driving in, and Draymond capitalized on 2 clutch free throws before stumping Butler on the other end to give Michigan State a chance to win the game down by 1 with just 23 seconds to go. Michigan State was undefeated up to this point in the tournament in 1-point game final possessions. However, the Butler Bulldogs, they were undefeated in defending against them. It was truly the unstoppable force versus the immovable object, and to make it even better, the 2 players that carried their teams to this point respectively, the best of the best, they would face off on the last stand to go to a national championship. Gordon Hayward versus Draymond Green for all the marbles.
15 seconds. Trying to post Green. Green outside, Hayward defending. No foul! Now at 10 seconds, in the paint, shot short, rebound Norad. I think that was just good defense by the Butler Bulldogs, particularly Gordon Hayward.
Just like that, what was once a mid-major fighting tooth and nail for a tournament bid at the beginning of the season was now a contender on a 25-game win streak competing for a national championship. Draymond Green would later claim that he thought the final play was a foul, and analysts claim that Butler didn't deserve the win since they only shot 30.6% from the field that game. But a team like Butler, It didn't matter how they shot as a team, because this team was a defensive nightmare. That was the backbone that got them this far. A nightmare that would be slotted to have their final showdown for all the glory against number 1 Duke. The tip was off, and Duke was immediately off to a hot start and getting ahead like they always did all tournament long. It took these 2 threes from Shelvin Mack and a tip in from Gordon Hayward to get Butler rolling, and from there it was back and forth.
Bounds again. This is high. On the floor to run things offensively. That's Jukes. Not that one. Now Hayward taking on Singler. Jukes. He can shoot it. For the lead in this first half. Shire. Banks it home. Shire had it. Smith waiting on the wing. Take the last shot. About 3 by Jukes.
The Dogs headed into their last halftime locker room of the season down by 3, made their adjustments, got a great speech from Brad Stevens, and headed back out to the 62,000 screeching fans that filled Lucas Oil Stadium for one last half of ball together. The second half kicked off with disaster as Duke began to lead the charge, and besides countless free throws keeping them from drowning, Butler had gone 7.5 minutes without a single field goal. They needed a bucket, and down by 5 in the clutch, now more than ever, they didn't have the time to keep missing. And so, Gordon Hayward and Matt Howard did what they'd done all season and made a huge play.
Hayward behind the back, gives it up to Howard, and it bounces in.
The crowd was on their feet and pounding as Duke brought the ball up down the court. And the Butler team that had made every defensive stand they needed all season just had to make one last stand. For the following clip, I want you to strictly pay attention to Matt Howard. People always talk about the stars of a team that make a run like this possible, but it's moments like these, impossible displays of grit in the face of hardship, that make me understand the importance of a monster like Matt Howard.
Lays it up. No, off the rim. Norad and the Bulldogs take it off. To the wing for the tie. Matt back to the rim. Howard comes crashing in. Keeps it for Butler. Oh, he loves that pull-up 3. Let's get a good shot. That's a good shot right there. Howard again on the inside. It's down to 1.
In the span of just 24 seconds, Matt Howard blocked a shot, grabbed a rebound, grabbed an offensive rebound, set 2 screens, and rolled to score the bucket they needed. Matt Howard was this entire team's heart and soul. Duke would take a timeout, and Howard would get his hand taped, meaning that he was now useless on offense. However, he was still able to put his body on the line yet again and get Butler the chance to score with 25 seconds to go. With Howard incapacitated and Shelvin Mack being absolutely locked down by the perimeter defenders of the Blue Devils, it was up to another Bulldog to be the hero, that being the man who brought them here, Gordon Hayward. Coach Stevens drew up a play and gave him the reins, and all they needed was for Gordon Hayward to be the hero that he had been all season long. Could Gordon Hayward be the one to do it?
Singler defending. 10 seconds ago, he wants to drive behind the back. On the baseline, straight away.
The play was perfect, the shot was perfect, but it just didn't fall down. You could taste the frustration in Hayward's eyes as he walked back down the court, walking to the free throw line with 3 seconds to go. Zubac had made the first free throw, but with one last free throw, Duke backed up to defend a game-winning shot, and Howard unable to be effective with his injured hand. It was clear that this ball was ending up in Hayward's hands. Despite the miss and the long odds, the fact of the matter was Gordon Hayward would get the last chance to win it all. He had played the perfect season, the perfect tournament, orchestrated one of the best runs in March Madness history, inspired millions with his electric play, and was a guaranteed lottery pick in the NBA draft coming up in just a few months. But between the past and future, all he was then and all he would end up becoming, the only thought captured behind his determined eyes was the last shot of his college career. The final shot to win a national championship that the thousands in the crowd and millions at home knew would be taken by Gordon Hayward.
Not gonna try. It's Hayward pulling it down, getting around Zubac at midcourt, launches this shot.
This shot will forever be remembered as what could have been the pinnacle of a March Madness moment. It was genuinely the greatest miss of all time for how unbelievably close it was. And although I'd never heard of anyone besides Hayward from this team before making this video, and had never watched a lick of Butler basketball in my entire life, even I was hurt watching Howard lay defeated at midcourt after giving it everything he had for 25 games. Even throwing his injured body in front of a defender one last time to give Gordon the open look that he got. He was truly a once-in-a-lifetime teammate. They had fought like hell for 25 straight wins, but on the win that mattered most, the Bulldogs fell short by mere inches. Shelvin Mack would go on to play one more year as a Bulldog, losing yet again in the national championship, but that would be enough to get him drafted and have a solid NBA stint, even reuniting with Gordon on the 2017 Jazz. He currently serves as an analyst for March Madness on CBS and watches the games that made him who he was. Matt Howard played one more year as well, having a massive jump in skill and going on to play overseas. He won a championship with Olympiacos in the Greek League before retiring, and today he serves as a financial advisor at Merrill Lynch, translating his grit in the court to the spreadsheets. Coach Stevens ended up taking his talents to become the head coach of the Celtics and even got to coach Gordon Hayward again during that time frame. Today, he serves as the Celtics general manager and was the mastermind behind this insane super team that won them a championship. And finally, Gordon Hayward, well, he became Gordon Hayward. He was drafted 9th overall to the Jazz following the tournament, would go on to have an incredible career in the NBA, becoming a one-time All-Star before being traded to the Celtics and suffering one of the worst injuries of all time just 6 minutes into the first game for them. And from there, that would spiral into his eventual retirement just last year in August of 2024. Gordon is widely respected for his years as a Utah Jazz member, seen as one of the best players in the league for that stretch of seasons there. And as for today, you can catch him on Twitch playing chess from time to time. Or you can turn on your TV and catch him reminiscing about the beautiful shot and beautiful run that could have been everything.
You know, that's the one I kind of wish like I would have had a chance to shoot again.
Regardless of what you think would have happened if he had made that shot, the reason I call this shot one of the greatest in March Madness history is because of his insignificance. It's rarely ever talked about anymore, overshadowed by the insane amount of buzzer beaters and Cinderella teams that have happened since then, and that's what makes this shot so beautiful to me. It shows how we as sports fans and even as humans operate. We're so quick to jump from new thing to new trend without stopping to appreciate something for what it is or what it was. Butler went in as a 5 seed, upset #1 Syracuse, surpassed some of the tournament's toughest teams in one of the most exciting runs ever, yet the final shot of their season fell just inches away from winning it all, resulting in a legacy that is now lost to time. To many, this shot will forever remain as just another what if, but to me, it's a reminder. A reminder to look back and appreciate fleeting moments in time before they become lost memories. And a reminder that history only honors the victor. So if you get the chance to shoot one last shot to win it all, you better not this.